Welcome to Safety Series number 15, Shelter in Place, brought to you by the Occupational Safety Leadership Podcast and Applied Safety Management. My name is Dr. David Ayers. Let's get started. So basically, a shelter in place is a procedure to stay inside. And in other words, it just really means that the air is worse outside than could ever be what's inside. And you could have things like just a purely safety wise from a tornado that's coming up. So I would think that with other types of weather events that you would not shelter in place, we would have enough time to know if there's a snow or ice event coming and things. So let's just kind of focus on the very short term things like tornadoes. Could also have a chemical, biological, terrorist event, something that's caused the air outside to be worse inside. Chemical things can occur, can happen on your property, of course, and they could also happen on your neighbor's property. It could be from a accident moving gasoline from point A to point B. It could be a train wreck. There's all kinds of ways that this stuff can happen. There's going to be different ways of being notified. So some places are going to have a siren. Other places will send out something via a text message on your phone. I know that for mine, I get a weather event. It'll turn on the siren and it'll kind of say, go to your phone for a weather event and look what's happening. There's probably not a universal way out there, so it really depends upon your area. A lot of very chemical refinery areas and all that have a whole siren system already built in place, whereas places in the Midwest, in the U.S., they have a lot of sirens in many towns set and ready to go. So for the first one here, when we talk about a short-term event, and of course we're just going to focus on the tornado. You can see this picture here, just the fury that this thing is bringing. Short-term event. You just need to have some food and water available then. So obviously, I try not to talk about anybody's personal medical issues. So they may need to just say things like insulin and other things around. That's really for folks to know. And I really try not to ask, but I tell folks, whatever medicine that you need, make sure that you have it around then. So same thing with water, but with a short-term event, hopefully, of course, everything will just pass, and you won't have the um, other needs out there. So let's go on to the next slide here, and we look if there's going to be some kind of chemical event, a bio. There's been terrorist attack. There's just something. And when you look at the picture here, we can see where we've had a train accident. Part of the train accident, you could have it where it's leaking out fuel or chemicals, whatever it's moving from point A to point B. So we know it's going to be a much longer. We also know that it's going to travel the way the air is pushing it. So you may think, well, that accident is X miles away from me, but like all things, the wind can shift, things can happen, so you may not be in it like right when it starts. You will get that notification to shelter anyway, not knowing the other factors on the ground. So when we think about things that we're going to need, flashlights, which of course are really great, but like all things, you have to go back and check them every so often for batteries. Is everything working and all that? You could use the chemical lights where you just kind of shake them up and break them different colors in case the power is cut during this incident. Food, we've already talked about medical issues now because this is a longer term event. I typically have a case of MREs from my Army time. I know that they are not tasty, but like all things, if you need to eat something due to medical issue, they're going to be there for a shelter in place incident. Same thing with water, and now because we're talking about a longer event, hopefully you have toilet facilities around and all that. If you do not have any of those around, given your location where you have to shelter in place and everything else, you may have to get a small portable toilet. which nobody wants to use, but if you really have to use it, it'll have to be used. We'll also talk about rags and duct tape and all that kind of stuff then. You have to have some kind of a head count list so that you know exactly who is and who is not there. The last thing that you want to do on a shelter in place is you obviously want to seal it up fast, and you're hoping you can get everybody in there, because if not, you're going to have to tell them to shelter in place in a different place. You have to have a way to call out along with the way for somebody to call in. Typically with cell phones, that's great and that's awesome as long as we can keep them charged and things. But we may have to depend on the old style phones. And fire department may call and say, we're now calling it all clear. You may have a radio that people can tune into. In many places, if you go to a specific AM frequency, it'll say, this is going to be the shelter in place has now been lifted, all that kind of stuff. So once again, it's kind of dependent upon where you happen to be and a lot of the industry that's around you. They also sell pre-made kits, the shelter-in-place kits, and these things are great and awesome, and that's typically the way that I go in this thing, just so that I'm not having to go back and check things. I can put a date on the outside. I can seal it with one of those little plastic seals to make sure that that everything is good and ready to go, and it's not meant as a way to keep people out for theft. It's just that one last indication that that somebody opened it up and used it. Somebody needs batteries or needs something else, they may think, well, that kit's not very handy, it's never been used. I'll just go take the batteries right out of there then. So it's just a nice way of keeping it all set and ready to go. And the American Red Cross has a fantastic checklist and resources available and all that. This is just a really fast video and introduction to shelter in place. This is not a exhaustive presentation at all. It's just enough to kind of get you thinking about, well, what do I need for my specific area. So as part of your shelter in place, you're going to seal your room and HVAC vents. You're going to use rags and duct tape and all that kind of stuff. Then move your HVAC to the off position. Some places do not actually have a off position for their HVAC because of ventilation requirements. It's always on, so you can't turn it off. But what you can do for the summertime, you can move it to the highest temp, so it won't turn on. And then for wintertime, you move it down to the lowest temperature, so it will not turn on then. So that's a nice alternative. And once again, you only leave when the fire department calls an all clear. So you may receive something via your phone, via text. There's going to be a lot of ways to talk. And once again, this is kind of dependent upon what you're going to have in your area out there. And that is it. Safety Series number 15, Shelter in Place. This is not a exhaustive presentation, just enough to get you going and thinking about what to do for your own situation out there. I'd like to thank the Occupational Safety Leadership Podcast and Applied Safety Management for sponsoring this, and have a safe day.